Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into a really profound framework for both personal growth and planetary healing. It's called StewardHeirShip, and it's basically a blueprint for how we can live in a way that's much more connected and much more alive.
Okay, let's just start with a feeling that I bet is pretty familiar to a lot of you. You look at the world, you see all these problems, and you try to help, right? But doesn't it often feel like our best efforts are just these disconnected pieces? Like we're all working hard, but none of it quite adds up to a whole.
Well, the sources for this explainer suggest that feeling isn't just in our heads. They argued the real root issue is what they call a crisis of perception. It's this powerful and frankly damaging illusion that we're all separate from each other, separate from our communities, and definitely separate from the planet itself.
So, how do we fix that? How do we start to heal this deep sense of separation? Well, the solution begins not by inventing something totally new, but by taking a familiar idea and evolving it into something way more powerful. And this is where it gets really interesting. We've all heard the word stewardship, right? Being a responsible caretaker. But look at what happens when you add the idea of heirship. The whole frame shifts. Suddenly, we're not just managing the present. We become a living link in a great chain, consciously receiving a legacy from the past and actively creating the one we leave for the future. So what is StewardHeirShip exactly? You can think of it as a holistic philosophy. The core belief is that we've been entrusted with caring for the earth. We're not its owners. We are both stewards of this moment and heirs to a sacred trust, which makes us responsible for what we pass on.
All right, let's get into the nitty-gritty. How does this philosophy actually become a lived reality? Let's break down the core framework, which is a really practical pathway for action. This whole thing is built on 4 interconnected pillars, the 4 S's. And you can see how they flow like a ripple in a pond. It all starts from the inside out. It begins with spirit, that inner awakening to our purpose. From there, it naturally flows outward into compassionate service. That service then takes real, tangible form through stewardship, the hands-on care for our world. And finally, all of that becomes visible in our day-to-day lives through sustainable living.
This quote just nails it, doesn't it? It shows so clearly that this isn't about choosing between inner work or outer action. There are 2 sides of the same coin. Your deep internal sense of purpose finds its voice in how you serve others. That in turn shapes how you care for the world, and all of that defines how you actually live every single day. It's a continuous flow. So let's zoom out. What happens when these ideas aren't just something a few of us are practicing? What happens when these principles become widespread? What kind of world does that actually create? Well, the end goal here is huge. It's nothing less than a full-on transformation of our society's foundation. It's a massive invitation to shift from a story of separation and taking to a story of connection and regenerating. This image does a fantastic job of mapping out that entire journey. It shows us how we build a bridge from what one theologian called economism, a system where profit is king, over to earthism, which is a worldview totally centered on life and the well-being of the planet. And you can also see what that path looks like for an individual, someone on the path of the earthist. It's about thinking differently, seeing yourself as part of a larger whole, family, community, planet, and adopting key practices like regenerative living. It shows how the big philosophy connects directly to your personal life.
And what's on the other side of that bridge? The destination is what's called an ecological civilization. Now, this is a vision of a world built not on constant competition, but on cooperation, on diversity, and on the flourishing of all life. It's where our human systems are finally and intelligently woven back into the fabric of the natural world.
And when these practices catch on, the results are just transformative. We're talking about real, tangible things, like ecosystems coming back to life. But we're also talking about deep cultural shifts. Success is no longer just about having more stuff. It's about well-being and harmony. Humanity finally finds its true place, not as the conqueror of nature, but as a conscious, caring member of the web of life.
So after all this big picture talk, it's important to remember that this grand vision isn't just some abstract theory. At its very heart, it is a deeply personal invitation for every single one of us to find our unique role in this incredible story of transformation.
Because really, this whole journey comes back to a very personal question. It's about our own growth, our own development. It's about becoming the kind of conscious, mature, and responsible people who can genuinely be trusted with the sacred gift of life itself. So, this is where we'll leave it. This explainer really brings us to one final, powerful question. Once you start to see yourself as both a grateful inheritor of everything that came before you and a worthy ancestor for everyone who will come after, what legacy of love, healing, and regeneration will you choose to pass forward?